Cedar Point in Sandusky, Ohio is what many consider to be the roller coaster capital of the world. But why is that? And how many coasters do they have? Well, they have 18, and if someone gave me 30 seconds to paint the picture for you, I would only have 1.66 seconds per coaster. So let's try that. 30 seconds on the clock. Drop them bars. So yeah, ranking my top 10 for this park was not easy. Many rides I went back and forth on. Cedar Point doesn't just build new roller coasters to say, oh look, we got another one. When they build a new one, they are always pushing the envelope and breaking records without cutting corners. If you've never been to Cedar Point, then it's probably at the top of your list. But if you have been, you were probably planning your next trip before you got out the parking lot. So yeah, this list was very hard to decide on, but coming in at number 10 is Rugarou, a B&M floorless coaster. Now before I get into this ride, I will be the first to say it's not the smoothest B&M I've ever rode, but I also didn't think it was as rough as I've heard others say it was. And just a little fun fact, this ride opened as a stand-up coaster in 1996 called Mantis, and surprise surprise, it broke several records on opening day for the tallest, the fastest, and the longest stand-up coaster in the world. It was closed at the end of the 2014 season and reopened in 2015 with the new name Rugarou, a new paint job, and floorless set-down trains. This ride is 145 foot tall and it hits speeds of 60 miles per hour. And while I wouldn't say it's one of the most exciting rides at the park, I do think it's a solid warm-up coaster that's also really nice to look at. Number 9 is Raptor, a B&M inverted coaster. When Raptor opened in 1994, you could say it was a very exciting day for Cedar Point, as this project would break many world records and included elements never experienced on an inverted coaster before. It features 6 inversions including the Cobra Roll and my favorite, the Zero G Roll. It's 137 foot tall and it hits a max speed of 57 miles per hour. As with most B&M coasters, you can expect a fairly smooth ride, and that green paint job really jumps out at you shortly after you enter the park. And it's so beautiful to watch from the Sky Ride. But keep in mind, this ride is still really popular, and because it's near the front of the park, the lines can get long early. The first time I ever rode Raptor, we had just made the 10-hour drive to the park and decided to go in that night for a few hours before they closed. The lift hill was lit up with bright green LED lights, and that first ride at night was the best ride I have ever got on Raptor. Maybe it was just that feeling of finally being at Cedar Point after 12 years of build-up. Coming in at number 8 is Magnum XL200. In 1989, Cedar Point gave us the world's first hypercoaster, and with that ride they started a coaster war. Magnum broke several world records, including the tallest coaster in the world, and it is still a fan favorite and is arguably one of the most impactful coasters ever built. It's 205 foot tall and it hits a max speed of 72 miles an hour. After that first drop in an airtime hill, you're going to hit a pretzel loop turnaround before coming back to experience a collection of small airtime hills that just keep coming one after another. It is some very unique airtime and it's hard to explain, you just have to experience it. If you ever make it out to Cedar Point, don't miss out on this amazing ride. Number 7 is Val Raven, a B&M dive coaster. Oh, and can you believe it? When Val Raven opened in 2016, it broke world records for the tallest, fastest, and the longest dive coaster in the world. And I've got a chance to ride 3 dive coasters. This one, Griffin at Busch Gardens Williamsburg, and SheiKra at Busch Gardens Tampa, Florida. And while I'll say I think the Val Raven has the best ride experience of the three, I just can't help but to love the theming of the two at the Busch Garden Parks a bit more. You climb the 223 foot tall lift hill and slowly turn around, getting a breathtaking view of Cedar Point and everything it has to offer. And then it happens. It holds you over the top of the drop for several seconds before Val Raven drops you from 214 feet in the air at a 90-degree angle before hitting a max speed of 75 miles an hour. Some people claim that a dive coaster is over after the first drop, and while I won't say that it matches the excitement of an RMC, I would strongly disagree, and I think they still have a lot to offer. And the number 6 spot on my list goes to Wicked Twister. I had such a hard time with this ride and number 5, but I had to pick one, and it was Wicked Twister. You know, I've heard so many people talk about the rattle this ride has, and yes, while it does have a small rattle, how could you possibly let that ruin this ride? Wicked Twister is located right on the edge of Lake Erie and really offers a breathtaking view. I mean, come on, you have a phenomenal launch that just keeps bringing it over and over again, and it reminds me so much of the launch on Volcano of the Blast coaster. And just a little fun fact, if you want to reach the highest point on Wicked Twister, ride it in the very back seat. On the 4th launch, you'll hit 72 miles an hour in reverse, and you'll climb 206 foot in the air. Do not skip out on Wicked Twister. This is a great ride that gets overshadowed at a park that just has so many great roller coasters. And kicking off the top 5 is Gatekeeper. Gatekeeper opened in 2013, and there are so many factors in me ranking this coaster ahead of other greats at Cedar Point. So let me start off by saying that yes, I know this is a pretty forceless coaster, but there are so many factors that go into a ride and what makes it great. So let's first start with the layout. When you go to a park, you go to get away and to have a great time, and that starts with when you get to the main entrance. Having the right coaster at the entrance can set the tone and can get you even more excited before you enter the park. If you need an example, just look at Carowinds with Fury 325. People wait before going into the park just to watch it over and over, and when they go in, it's time to ride Fury. You see, Cedar Point is located on a Lake Erie peninsula, and Gatekeeper rides the edge before turning to the right to give you 2 awesome flyovers over top the entrance. One of them flipping you through keyholes, not to mention Gatekeeper's paint scheme is by far my favorite of all time, simply because it fits the theme of Cedar Point, Lake Erie, and the seagulls that always seem to be near. Gatekeeper features the world's highest inversion, a wing over drop that's 170 foot tall and hits speeds of 67 miles per hour. Yet I wouldn't hesitate to tell anyone that is scared of roller coasters that Gatekeeper would be one of the best rides ever to get you over your fears. This ride is so smooth and perfect, from the way it hangs you over the side of the track to the perfect and comfortable restraints, and as I've said before, even though it's not the most forceful coaster in the world, it's sure to be one that many people can enjoy. Number 4 is Top Thrill Dragster. Top Thrill Dragster has got to be the most thrilling and also the most nerve-wracking coaster to watch all at the same time. You see, let me explain. Both of my trips this year I stayed in the Hotel Breakers. I love this hotel so much because it gives a great view of so many rides inside the gates of Cedar Point. We got to the Hotel Breakers at about midnight, and the next morning I woke up and I was getting ready to enter the park and I heard it. The sound of thunder. I said, I didn't think it was going to storm today. So I went over to the window and it's beautiful out. And then I hear it again. And that's when I realized it's Top Thrill Dragster. Taking off so fast it's shaking the earth. I don't care if you love coasters or you hate them. This is one ride you can't help but watch. I'm crazy about roller coasters, and while it was so thrilling watching it launch from my window or from the bleachers in the park, the closer you get in the line, the more nerve-wracking it gets. because you know it's about to launch you 420 foot in the air at 120 miles an hour in 3.8 seconds. And even though I've rode it multiple times and I love it, I still get that feeling before I climb into the seats. As I stated in my previous top 10 video, when you pull up to the drag lights and stop, you hear it. The brakes drop down and you know it's about to happen, and you can't stop it at this point. The second it launches, it's the fastest thing you have ever felt, and you don't have a care in the world. Before you know it, you're at the top, and before you can blink, you're back to earth. It's over, but you can't stop smiling, and you high-five the person beside you. This is why you came to Cedar Point, and the day is just getting started. Kicking off at top 3 is Maverick. So many people look into stats way too much. They say things like, I would ride Maverick before I rode Val Raven. I mean, Maverick is only 105 foot tall. Val Raven is a 223 foot tall dive coaster. But let me tell you, they would be wrong. Very wrong. Maverick packs 10 times the punch of Val Raven, and as a matter of fact, it packs more punch than Millennium Force and top Thrill Dragster. Yes, that first drop is only 105 foot tall, but add in the fact that it is at a beyond vertical angle of 95 degrees and also how fast you pop over the top thanks to the LSM launch, you'll be in for one serious gut-busting drop, especially if you're in the back row. After the drop, you're hit with so many elements one after the other, along with a fantastic pop of airtime. You slow down for a quick breather, thinking the ride is over before it launches you 70 miles an hour, popping you out of a tunnel and sending you racing across the water. You then start hitting one element after another so fast, before you know it, the ride's over. You hop on Maverick expecting a fairly tame ride, but what you're left with is pulling back into the station, thinking to yourself, okay, what just happened? That was amazing. Number 2 is Millennium Force. Now if it came down to the ride itself, Maverick is better. But Millennium Force is so much more than just the ride itself. Let me explain. Just because you can make the best tasting hot dog in the world does not mean that people will enjoy it more than grabbing a quick hot dog at the World Series. When Millennium Force opened to the public in 2000, it would be a game changer. It broke so many world records, including the title of the tallest coaster in the world, a 310 foot tall Giga. And this ride didn't just break records. To most people, it was perfect in every way possible. From the way the lift hill brings you to the top right along the edge of Lake Erie for such a breathtaking view, to the way Millennium Force flies through Cedar Point right beside and over top the guest. Millennium Force is such a great ride. And you don't have to take my word for it, just look at how many times Millennium Force has won the title for the best steel coaster in the world. But those days are over now, because Cedar Point has built perhaps the greatest coaster the world has ever seen. A coaster that makes Fury 325 feel like a stroll in the park. A record-crushing 200-foot-tall RMC hybrid monster. I'm talking
Steel Vengeance. So you say you like roller coasters, huh? You'll ride anything. I bet you won't get that back seat. Go ahead, give it your best shot.
So I want to thank you for making it to the end of my video. I appreciate every single view I get. If you haven't already, click the subscribe button here. Also, if you'd like to watch my top 10 roller coasters I've ever ridden, click right here. And I've got a video that I think you might like right here. Thanks for watching.